Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are back in Scotland once again. As you might be able to tell from the change in background, back filming in front of the drum kit and having the beer sitting on top of my drum stool. That's how we do it when we're back in Scotland. But for this review, we are going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but they are today one of the most highly rated Scottish craft breweries, and they're known particularly for their New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. And this beer is one of their latest releases, and I've heard that it is very good. So very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. It's always nice to try their new beers. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We are going to go to Yoker to be specific, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Overtone Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Cutting Shapes. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released just a couple of weeks ago. And I saw it in one of my local shops. So I thought, well, you know, I wasn't planning on filming stuff when I came back to Scotland from Germany. But, you know, if there's a new Overtone beer presents itself, you just kind of have to go for it. But yeah, we've had some very good New England double IPAs from these guys in the past. And I've heard that this one is pretty nice actually, so why not? Let's just do it. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. It's always nice to try some new things from Overtone, of course. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Overtone Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, normally when I'm back home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Overtone Brewing Company once again then. So Overtone Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based through in Glasgow, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Bo Wang, who is originally from Beijing in China. So he had been a home brewer for a number of years before he founded the company, and the name Overtone comes from his love of techno music, and that is also the reason why you get these kind of techno-inspired designs on the can. I'm not sure if it is Bo Wang himself that actually designs these, come to think of it, but there is no artist signature on these ones, so I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, if it was him that was doing it. But in the early days, Bo Wang hired Dan Miller, who's from New Hampshire in New England in the northeastern part of the US, to come in as his head brewer. He had previously worked as a head chef, but also as a brewer in England, New York, and also in Scotland for 6 Degrees North, who are a very nice kind of Belgian style brewery. They brew their beers in Lawrencekirk, but they kind of, you know, they are based primarily in the northeast of Scotland. You know, the Harbour Inn and the 6 Degrees North pub in Aberdeen. That's probably their kind of home base, I guess you could say. But also involved in the brewery is Martin Conahan, who worked in the craft beer scene in New Zealand for a number of years, but he does a lot of other things around the company as well. And they've also got Charlie, who is part of the brew team these days as well. The brewery itself can be found in the New Albion Industrial Estate in Yoker near Renfrew and Clydebank, and they began operations there back in 2018. So the brewery don't have a fixed range, but they're always kind of brewing different beers, and they are focusing mainly on the New England Hazy IPA style. I believe that's what their whole business model is based around. But they have been doing a few sours in recent times. You'll get West Coast IPAs from them every so often, and they do a very nice Imperial Stout as well. We've had a couple of lagers from them at different points, Hefeweizens, and they are starting to play around with a few different sour beers and things as well. So I will need to see about reviewing some of those sour beers for you on the channel at some point in the near future, because those have been getting good write-ups as well. But as of April 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced a little bit over 60 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that will no doubt continue to increase over the next little while. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Overtone Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at the beer itself. I'm feeling a little bit out of breath after giving you that little history section there. But yeah, let's take a little look at the can itself before we open the beer up. So as you can see, it has one of these typical Overtone designs. This one is probably going to annoy the camera a little bit because it looks grey, but it's actually more of a kind of shiny gunmetal sort of colour there. But you can see the design of this one is a wee touch different looking compared to the other ones. A little bit more of that kind of, you know, 16-bit, or what would it be, 32-bit graphic, something like that. It looks very, very cool. But there you can see the Overtone thing on the side there. Cutting shapes, 440 millilitres, 8% ABV, New England double IPA. This one, it says, this double dry hop, double IPA balances some bold bitterness with some sweet juicy mango and coconut flavours. And this one is hopped with Sabro, Cryo, Idaho 7 and Simcoe. It actually feels like a wee while since we've had Simcoe in a beer, but we know all of these hops quite well. All three of them are American. Sabro, of course, comes in about 14% alpha acid. That gives you that lovely, very kind of bright mandarin-y orange, but also a little bit of kind of coconutty character underneath. Idaho 7's about 14% alpha acid, and it gives you these very soft kind of mango-y notes with apricots and papayas and stuff like that in it. And Simcoe is a little bit more of an old school hop. That's about 12% alpha acid, and in a New England IPA, it gives you this really soft passion fruity note. So this one should be really, really interesting in terms of what it's going to give us, and it is really quite highly rated as well when you have a little look at it on Untappd. I think it was a 4.2 this one had when I had a wee quick look earlier on. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the beer. It is a plain silver top on the can there, so let's crack it open and see how we go. The Overtone Brewing Cutting Shapes 8% double dry hopped New England double IPA. Let's go for it. This beer I actually bought at Ellie's Cellar along in Dollar, and I think I paid like £6 for it. So that translates to what, about 72 Swedish kroner, I think it would be at today's rate. €7.20, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $8 for the can. So yeah, not too bad. Craft beer is a wee bit more expensive here in Scotland than it is in Sweden, which is kind of odd, but I buy all my stuff through Systembolaget, or of course over in Denmark, where it is just a wee bit more expensive. But yeah, anyway, there we go. So that is the beer out into the glass, and there we are. Let me just line the can up so that my OCD is happy. So there you go. Anyway, you can see this beer has poured exactly as you would expect for a New England double IPA. So before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it has a solid half finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. I wouldn't describe it as perfect white. That is fading away just to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, and a few little ones just going up toward the bottom of the head. But otherwise, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. In terms of colour, I would describe this one as being a very kind of pale yellow colour. It's almost the same colour as like a mango or a pineapple juice, something like that. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of your beer as well, but you normally don't have to care about that when it comes to New England IPAs, and this one is no exception to that. In terms of the level of haze that we're getting out of this one, it's leaning more toward that soupy and gloopy end of the spectrum, but it's certainly not the soupy and gloopiest of beers that I've come across. But remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and also the yeast as well. There's no real rule about the ABV and these things, of course, because it can vary from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. But yeah, in terms of what you would expect appearance-wise from a New England double IPA, nothing unusual about this one, to be honest with you, so I'm quite happy with it. Nothing else we really need to say about it then. Let's crack on and have a wee look at the aroma. Very curious to see what this is going to give us from that side of things. So, aroma time. That does smell very, very nice, actually. First impression of it is that it has this really big kind of oily note to it. You get that big oily fruit coming out of it, but at the same time it's got a big kind of oaty character to it as well. But yeah, big oily fruits, thick kind of oaty notes, good little bit of bread, and it's almost just got a little bit of this kind of candied medicinal sort of character to the fruit as well. I mean, if I was smelling this blind, I might actually guess there was a bit of cashmere or something in this one. I'm not sure, but I think it could be the Sabro Cryo that's given it that sort of candied kind of note in the fruit. But yeah, overall, it smells like quite a bright, grassy and fruity New England IPA with a good little bit of bread behind it as well. So yeah, the way that this one goes about its aroma, I think, is very nice. But let's break that down for you a little bit more and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth, should we say. Yeah, so the malty backbone then. Definitely, there is a little bit, there's definitely a wee bit of that kind of bread crusty backbone to this one. You can smell it like a fresh hedgehog roll. You can certainly smell that forming the backbone of this beer, absolutely. So fresh, white bready bread crust. On top of that, definitely some nice fluffy fresh white bread. That's going to be from the barley malt in the beer, absolutely. But you can certainly smell that the wheat is playing quite a big role in this one as well. The wheat was really thickening out this one a wee bit. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because for me, you do get a little bit of bitiness from the wheat in the back of the nose, but overall the wheat actually smells really smooth in this one. And to be honest, the more that I smell of it, I do wonder if the wheat is starting to take a back seat to the oats in this one. So that's really interesting. So yeah, absolutely soft white, soft, you know, fresh hedgehog roll bread crust sort of thing. Fluffy white bread, absolutely. The thickening wheaty layers coming out with a wee bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, and you've also got that big creamy oaty character out of this one. Now, as I've said to you before, for me, when it comes to oatiness in these beers, oatiness always can tell you how old the beer is, actually, because the younger the beer is, the smoother and creamier the oats come across as being, but the older the beer is, it tends to be a little bit drier and more almost powdery like in its aroma, and we'll be able to detect that in the taste as well, I'm sure. But to me, the oats in this one smell very, very creamy. But there is something interesting going on, I think, between the yeast and I think the Sabro Cryo in this one, and I've come across this before in it was a triple IPA between Fierce Beer and Dugas Brewery, actually. I'm getting this really candied, it's almost like Pander Violet type aroma coming out of this one, and that's really interesting. Or Parma Violets, sorry, not Pander Violets. I don't know why I call them Pander Violets, but Parma Violets. I'm getting this candied fruity note coming out of this beer. But yeah, the oaty creaminess is coming out of this one, but you really smell this bright sort of candied thing coming out of this beer. In terms of sweetness, I think there is a wee bit of a Werther's Original type note coming out of this one, that butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And as I've explained in many videos before, for me there are 6 elements to think about in a New England IPA. So it can be kind of farmhousey and yeasty, it can be rye-leaning and grainy. These 2 elements are a little bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, but you can also get the wheaty bitiness, you get the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and you can also get the kind of sweetness. And often these beers will display a few of those characteristics, but yeah, you do get quite a few. You do actually get quite a few of these things coming out in this one. This one actually has quite a lot of stuff going on just in the malty base of the aroma, as you've seen with how long it's taken us to describe that. But yeah, let's move on and have a wee look at the hoppy side of things in this beer. Strange, this is actually my first kind of sit-down review that I've done in what feels like a wee while, actually. So yeah, I think it's been about 2 weeks or so since I filmed one. So that if this one seems a little bit rusty, that's why. Yeah. So on the hoppy side of things then, I do get, on the green component, I do get a wee bit of earthiness coming out of this one, but not madly much. There's a nice bit of floral aromaticity to the beer as well. It's got quite a nice big kind of floral aromatic component to it, and it's it's almost like an oily floral character that you get out of this beer, which I really do quite enjoy. So a nice big kind of oily floral character to this one for sure. A little bit of a lighter grassy note to it as well. And again, for me, that's quite oily. I don't know if it's the cryo that would be doing this one, but this certainly doesn't smell like dusty or anything like that, as you can often get from dry hopping. But that might just be that this beer, I think it's been in the can maybe like 3 weeks or something like that. So it might just be the fact that the beer's kind of reaching that point where it's just everything's really oily, because that can happen with New England IPAs. If you drink them too early, they can often be quite green. If you drink them too late, they can often feel like quite dry and powdery and overly citrusy and stuff like this. But I think this one we might just be getting in its prime actually, which is quite exciting. But yeah, a nice big oily green component for me, a deep floral aromaticity, some oily grassy notes, and then you've got that nice big fruity oiliness to this one as well. So yeah, I really like this. For me, this beer, it does have quite a nice bright orangey character to it, and that's from the Sabro, absolutely, and you can smell the coconut just sitting in underneath, but then behind that you've got all these tropical notes. I mean, for me there's a big juicy mango to this one, and that's I think both from the Idaho 7, and I think Simcoe will give you a little bit of that as well, but you're also getting that big soft passion fruity note out of the Simcoe as well, but you can detect little bits of apricot and papayas and all of these kind of things. It's actually quite a straight shooting beer, this one. It's quite often you'll get beers that were a bit orangey and a bit kind of mango or passion fruity leaning, and this one really smells quite like that. So I've got a feeling that this is one of these beers that's going to be quite straight shooting, but just very well done. But yeah, fruity notes for me are nice and big and juicy and creamy. It certainly ticks the boxes for me, I have to say. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma on this one. But as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But yeah, this one is the Cutting Shapes, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing in Yoker in Glasgow. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Really pretty damn nice, I have to say. On first impression, it's quite a big oaty and creamy, but still really juicy and slightly slick IPA. I really like how that goes together, absolutely. Yeah, that is pretty damn nice. If you're wondering why I'm a bit squirming a wee bit, I've got a little cut on the inside of my mouth here, which is a little bit annoying actually. I can feel it kind of stinging a wee bit as I drink the beer, so if you see my face going a little bit like nothing to do with the beer, it's just this cut inside my mouth. So yeah, maybe drinking beer, this is the first beer I've had since I've noticed it. Maybe drinking beer isn't such a good idea with this one, so this might be the only review you see from this little flying visit to Scotland. But I think this is the only IPA I've got, so makes sense. But yeah, anyway, this is a really nice, big, oily and smooth, creamy New England double IPA. It's so well done. You couldn't really ask for much more than this. So yeah, you will enjoy this one if you get the chance to try it. Absolutely. And that's the thing. People often ask me, "Oh, what's your favourite Overtone beer?" It's very difficult to answer that. Because we've had so many, and this brewery mainly focus on the one style. And if it came down to it, I would still go back and pick the Rwandan coffee IPA that I had, the very first beer that I tried from them, just because it was so unusual and it worked. I mean, there's always that little bit of nostalgia factor in there, but the new beers are always very good. So you are going to enjoy this one if you try it. I'll say that straight away. But let's break the flavour down and describe it for you in the normal way that we always do. But this is a really, really nice New England double IPA. I was impressed with Broken Clouds, which I think was the last one that I reviewed from these guys, if memory serves me correctly, other than the collaboration, of course. But Broken Clouds really impressed me, and this one has certainly done the same. Yeah, that's very, very nice. Yeah, so on the malty side of things then, let's have a little look at this. Focus on that middle third of your palate. You can feel definitely a wee bit of that kind of light bread crusty note coming out of this one. So that forms the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you get that thicker, fluffy, white bready character for sure. Yeah, you've got that thicker, fluffy, white bready character in there. Absolutely. And I think that I do think that goes together really nicely too. But I think the more that you drink of this beer, the kind of thicker and creamier that it becomes. But it certainly is a bit of a beast, this one. I can feel the punch that this one is packing. But I think that's been because I've been in Germany and, you know, trying lots of different lager beers and stuff like that. I've only tried a couple of New England IPAs when I've been in Germany this time. So I'm feeling the difference between the lager beers and the New England IPAs, that's for sure. But yeah, lovely, fluffy, white bready notes sitting on top of this. On top of that, you can feel the wheat just thickening out the beer. Then on top of that, you're getting the big, smooth, oaty characteristic out of the beer. And the oats really give the beer just this huge, huge creaminess. Yeah, this beer, it really does start to lean more towards that big kind of oaty creaminess the more that you drink of it. And it's nice. I mean, you can feel that sort of candied thing that I was talking about, that sort of pander violet flavour. In the middle of the palate, I'm really getting quite a wee bit of that out of this one, which is really interesting. And I've had it in one or two beers before. Like I said, that one that was from the anniversary beer that they did, that Fierce Beer did with Dugas, the big triple IPA, it had a similar thing in it. So it must be the interaction between a certain type of yeast and one of the hops. And I've got a feeling that beer had Sabro Cryo in it as well, if I remember right. Because you do notice things. Cashmere is one that really interacts in very weird ways with certain yeasts and stuff like that too. So yeah, on top of that kind of oaty, creamy layer, you're getting this pander violet kind of candied sort of thing. But then in the dead centre of your palate, you'll feel there's just this little tiny dot there where you get this concentrated Werther's Original big butterscotchy, butter candy type thing coming out of this beer. But yeah, it really works. It really does work very nicely. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the middle third of your palate in this one. It's really very straight up. The bread crust, the fluffy white bread, the thicker wheat, the oaty creaminess, that sort of candied pander violet thing, and then you can feel that sort of butterscotchy, butter candy type thing right in the dead centre of your palate too. But overall, a very, very nice beer, this one, and it certainly leans toward that oaty, creamy side of the New England spectrum. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you got a little bit of bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust and things, but otherwise, you know, not too much to report. But the base of that back third of your palate, the bread crust, you know, is a little bit more grainy and things. You get a slightly thicker layer of that kind of fluffy white bread for sure. You can feel the wheat has a little bit of bitiness there, and then on top of all that, you've got a wee bit of yeastiness coming out of this one too. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, it feels like, again, a slightly more dense white bready character sitting on top of everything there. You get a little bit of dryness out of it, a little bit of an almost kind of Jacob's cream crackery type note, and one or two of these little woody kind of farmhousey notes to it as well. So I do really like how that, how all of that goes together in this one. So for me, the back third of the palate in this, I think, is pretty nice. Yeah, I think it gives you everything you would want from the beer, but the malty side of this one for me ticks all the boxes. Back third of your palate, of course, the flavour is taller than the middle third of your palate, so when you come further forward, you can feel the flavour starts off about this tall at the back of the palate, then as you move into the middle third, it just condenses down a wee bit. But yeah, on the green side of things, on the hoppy side of the beer, because I think we've said everything we need to about the malty side of it. On the back corners of the palate, there is a wee tiny bit of earthiness, but you'll find very quickly this beer gets really oily and bright and floral actually. There is a bit of depth to the floral aromaticity as well, and I think that is due to the Sabro Cryo. I suspect the Sabro Cryo is the one that will have been used as the kind of early addition hop, if you like. So remember, early addition hops are the ones that give you all the bitterness. Late addition hops give you a little bit of bitterness but a lot of flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is the one that gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma. So New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, whereas West Coast IPAs have those two, but also quite a lot of early addition hopping to get that big bitterness. But of course that's changed in recent times because a lot of the newer West Coast IPAs are brewed to be lower bitterness because newer drinkers have got used to the New Englands. But yeah, that's another thing anyway. But this, for me, there's that big, bright, but still quite deep, oily component to this one. Yeah, that lovely big floral oily depth there is really nice. But around the front curve of your palate, this beer has a nice it's got a nice kind of oily grassiness there, and there is a wee bit of zestiness to it as well, and I think that's everything that we really need to say about the green component in this beer. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things and the front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there. Base of that front third of your palate is nice and smooth, white bread and a little bit of the oaty character. And then on top of that, you get that nice big oily, sort of oily, just mix of fruits going on. It's really nice. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, you get that more pungent passion fruity note, which I think is going to be coming from the Simcoe, but I think Idaho 7 can give you a wee bit of that too. So you get quite a pungent passion fruit, but it mellows out just as you move further forward. Then there's this big oily mango note to it, and of course you're in the middle of that, in the dead middle of that front third of your palate, you're going to get a little bit of you're going to get a little bit of like papaya and apricot and stuff like this. But as soon as you move into the front half of that, of the front half of that front third of your palate, you can feel the coconut from the Sabro underneath, but you get that big oily and kind of zesty mandarin-y orange out of this one from the Sabro. So yeah, this beer is very, very nice. It's a big oily fruity character that you get with this one, and I really quite like it. I am just struggling a wee bit because of this cut on the inside of my mouth here. I really don't know what I did with this. Yeah, really no idea. But it is a little bit sore actually. As I say, this might well have to be my last beer review for a wee while just to let this heal. But anyway, so yeah, lovely big oily fruity character this one, and well balanced between the more kind of zesty orangey notes and the softer tropical ones. I like this, and this is a really, really good, very good New England double IPA. I hope this is one that they do again for people, because if you've missed out on this one, you have missed out on a very good Overtone beer, that's for sure. Let's round off this one with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. Yeah, for me, mouthfeel wise, it's interesting. It's pushing, it's bottom end of full bodied, top end of mid bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's lovely and creamy, but also has quite a nice big slick. Oily character to it as well, which I think brings out some of the fruitiness. But on the hoppy side of things, I would say that this one is a fairly typical like 30 IBU beer. It could be 40 at push. Not 100% sure about that yet. It could be about 40 IBUs, but it really doesn't give me much bitterness. It actually feels really more like zesty and deep in its floral character, but I don't find it overly bitter, to be honest with you. But remember, IBUs are my weakest point of beer reviewing, so always take my IBU ratings with a pinch of salt. But the malt base, as we said, it's got a little bit of the kind of barley malt sort of thing and a wee bit of dryness in there. It's nice and thick, and you've also got just a little bit of that kind of sweetness in there as well, but for me it's mainly a creamy malt base, and you've got this big oily fruity character to this one, a wee bit of zestiness too, from the orangey side of things, but then that nice kind of more oily tropical fruit. So yeah, I really like how this one, I do really like how this one goes about its business. So yeah, it works, it really works for me, this one. So a solid, yeah, really solid New England double IPA, this one. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that. This was the Cutting Shapes, a New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Overtone Brewing in Yoker in Glasgow here in Scotland. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Overtone Brewing, and I'm sure we will return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, check out my social media, check out Overtone's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, see you very soon. Make sure you check out Overtone, and Cutting Shapes is a pretty damn good New England double IPA. Slàinte just now.